our best people have not found the rhythm. So,
no, they definitely have not. Sheldon Keefe, matter-of-fact kind of way, points the finger right at his big guns after a tough loss to Arizona and a 2-2 start to the season. Meanwhile, in Washington, the Canucks make the wrong kind of history, blowing yet another lead. Welcome to Got Your Back, brought to you by Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals. Cross Country Canada provides equipment and supplies to all facets of the Canadian construction industry. They're a truly Canadian company. I love the way this company got started. 4 buddies in a garage with nothing but a folding table and an idea. Back in 2014, they've now got multiple locations across Western Canada, over 100 employees, and they've expanded into all areas of the construction industry. Their motto, "Get her done," it's proudly displayed on the walls there at the head office, and they live by it. Cross Country Canada, truly a Canadian company, and we're very happy to have them on board as our title sponsor. As we check in this morning, we don't have them live and in person, but we do have Pierre LeBrun on the telephone, and that's going to have to suffice for now. Pierre, you'd be happy to know I've selected a wide range of various pictures of you to represent you. I was nice with some of them and not so much with others.
I will go back and check it out when this pod is up, my friend. I'll make sure that you treated me right.
Yeah, I think we did a little bit of this last year, and I believe they're all approved by you. I think we did it last year, and the one of the boat, the one of you out on the boat. It's not up right now, but I love that picture of you. That's like relaxed summer cottage Pierre.
That's the best time of year right there. We'll have to wait another 10 months.
Actually, the pictures aren't rotating through, so maybe I made a technical error, and we just have all we have is your smiling face on the Sports Center set. So that's it. Nice gray suit, blue tie.
There you go.
One of your staples.
Yes, I'm in New York City, in case our listeners are wondering.
Yeah, exactly. The Board of Governor meeting's happening out there. We're going to get to the breakdown here in a second, and we'll talk about everything we saw in the National Hockey League last night. And man, was it eventful! But take us through what you expect here at the Board of Governors. What's happening?
Yeah, so this isn't the big meeting. The big meeting's in December, where they meet for 2.5 days. This is a quick little update that they have at the start of each season. The owners literally fly in and out, most of them in the same day. But, I suspect that owners will be interested to hear more details on where the salary cap is headed the next few years, right? There'll be more, finances, updates that way in terms of league rebounding out of the pandemic. But a number of items that the league tries to go through very quickly just to get the season going for presidents and governors and owners as they congregate here for about 3.5 hours at a hotel in Manhattan.
Any sense if the Toronto Maple Leafs will be bringing up video review after last night?
You know what? The thing is, I think that that's not really what – I mean, that's not really the lead, though.
Yeah.
I mean, the lead, again, is Sheldon Keefe, making a comment about his elite players not being in rhythm.
Yeah.
About 6 days after going after his team after the opening night loss in Montreal, which came a couple of weeks after losing his temper during practice at training camp.
Oh, yeah.
And so, things are boiling early in Toronto. By the way, as they were a year ago, if you remember a year ago, they had a little period in October where a few losses were stringed together and everyone panicked in Toronto. So
the regular season's always tense out there, man, because nobody can hit the pressure release valve until playoff time. The pressure just builds and builds. Every win, while you're supposed to be a great team, every loss, it's happening again, and there's no way to release the pressure until you get to playoffs. And they haven't been able to do it. All right, listen, let's get to the breakdown brought to you by Pro Hockey Life. Hockey fans, the regular season's underway, and there's no better time to get yourself outfitted with your favorite jersey or sweater, whether it's your favorite player's name and number, or I guess if you want to throw your own name on there, why not? Pro Hockey Life has an awesome selection of team apparel, and it doesn't end at jerseys. There's also a wide range of hats, t-shirts, souvenirs, everything you need for yourself and for the huge hockey fan in your life. 16 locations across the country. Pro Hockey Life, like you, is obsessed with the game. All right, I was going to start with Bruce Boudreau and the Vancouver Canucks, but we got going there on the Toronto Maple Leafs. So let's get back to that. Leafs are off to a 2-2 start, a 4-2 loss to Arizona. I watched that entire game. Yes, the Maple Leafs had the puck on their stick a lot, but really not able to get a whole lot done because the Coyotes challenged them to get to the middle of the ice, and they just didn't seem to be able to get there. After the game, Sheldon Keefe with this statement about his top-end guys.
Our best people have not found the rhythm, so maybe really look at it. The difference between us and Arizona is that we have elite players, and our elite players didn't play like elite players today. Couldn't make a difference. So in that sense, the game is going to be close. That's the way it goes when those guys don't make the difference that they can.
No untruth in there, but aggressive for this early in the season, Pierre. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty fascinating thing. We've not really seen Sheldon Keefe be in this kind of mindset this consistently early in the season, and since he's been the Leafs head coach. And let's remember, he replaced Mike Babcock, and he came in as the younger coach that would have, that better understanding, I guess, and relationship with his younger core players, right? I mean, that was part of it, and that has played out. Frankly, I think that we have seen that understanding between Keefe and his core guys, but his frustration with them and with his team at times here early this year, I think, is representative of what he is feeling himself in terms of what they have to finally deliver here this year. He's feeling it. Kyle Dubas is feeling it. Brendan Shanahan is feeling it. Again, this bears repeating for people who don't follow the Leafs every day. This franchise has not been out of the first round since 2004, going on 19 years. And a lot of that predates them, of course, which is why they had a massive tank job and rebuild and positioned themselves to get Austin Matthews in 2015. But, when you don't win and you don't deliver, this is the season. Like, there has to be results this year, or else I think it's inevitable that heads will roll. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Kyle Dubas' own contract, which he's talked about publicly, is up at the end of the year, and he wants to be judged on this year, finally getting over the hump. Austin Matthews, at the end of the season, will be 1 year away from unrestricted free agency. It's decision time this offseason. I mean, the Leafs can't let this player walk into training camp next September on a pending UFA situation. They need to have him extended. So you could say what you want about it's early and they're going to find their game, which I think is true. I mean, there's so much hockey to be played here, and they'll be among the elite teams for the playoffs. But it's still representative of what we've seen so far of the pressure. Never mind what the media and the fans are saying in Toronto. This organization is feeling it internally. I can tell that. Conversations I've had. I mean, the pressure is on, and it's on because they feel it themselves. And that's what we're seeing play out right now.
For sure. And there's a lot of talk about the Dubas contract or lack thereof. And at the time it happened, there was a lot of talk about, let the year play out. And, it'll be what it'll be, and we'll see. The one thing I keep raising my hand, kind of quietly mentioning or asking about is, does it get to the end of the year? Like, if the Leafs aren't where they want to be at Christmas time, clearly where they want to be at Christmas time, is there change before the trade deadline comes and goes? If the team is not positioned where it needs to be, does Dubas get another trade deadline to try and fix things? Is it for sure a guarantee that this goes all the way to the playoffs? And it is early. They're 2-2. Their big guns aren't putting up the kind of numbers that propel them to the record we're used to them having. But I'll just kind of add that little footnote. Does it get to the end of the year? Let's see what happens in Leafland. A goal and assist so far through 4 games for Austin Matthews. Okay, Vancouver Canucks creating a little NHL history. They become the first team in history to lose their 3 first games, blowing multi-goal leads in all 3. Edmonton, 3-0, blew it. Philly, 2-0, blew it. Washington, 4-2 lead, blew it. Lost 5-4. This is pretty stunning fashion in which the Canucks have started their season, prompting Bruce Boudreau to come up with this gem.
Mentally weak would be a good assessment, I think. Instead of when you're on a roll, you're waiting for good things to happen. When you're in something like this, you're waiting for something bad to happen.
So he had a lot more to say about his team, but pretty strong indictment and tough words from the head coach here early on.
Yeah, I remember this is a team that I don't know the exact date. I think it was early December last year because I was at a Board of Governors meeting. The Canucks fired Travis Green and brought in Bruce Boudreau, right? Brought in Jim Rutherford. There were some massive changes, not even midway through last season for this organization. I've always felt this, and especially in the Canadian market, and let's just call it for what it is, the Vancouver Canucks market is very, very passionate and reacts in certain ways to situations like this.
So was my 4-year-old when he was 4.
Yeah.
I would call him similarly passionate.
Yeah. You could have this type of 3-game losing streak in December and it doesn't generate the same kind of headlines and reaction in your market. But to start the year that year this way always is more dramatic because fair or not, the start to the season tends to send a message about your team and you start to look into potential trends and why we're not prepared to start the year and what is this about. And on top of that, you have the backdrop of kind of an awkward resolution to bringing back Bruce Boudreau to begin with in the offseason. I mean, he had the 1+1 where the +1 after last year was a mutual option where both the coach and the team, decide they want to act on the option. And it was, it took a while. And, I think part of that obviously for Boudreau is that I think he probably wanted a new deal, an extension, which any coach would in that position.
Yeah.
And I think the Canucks front office is like, well, let's just wait and see this year, which again, I can see from their perspective. And so I think it's important to highlight that background to the start of this year because it was a bit unusual the way it played out.
So what do you think is real when it comes to Bruce Boudreau? Because I don't believe that the Canucks decide to retain him, go through an entire summer with him at the helm, training camp, get into the regular season, and 3 games in be sitting there realistically thinking about making change this early on. But
right.
It can't last forever as well. So what do you think is real in terms of a timeline where that becomes a thing in Vancouver?
Yeah, I think it's too early for that, but let's see whether this snowballs or not. It's absolutely too early in my mind.
Yeah.
But sometimes teams don't recover from a brutal start. And, I don't know how high the expectations were for this team, to be honest. I mean, I guess when they extended JT Miller, it signified obviously that they weren't going in for a longer retool.
So a little more about the here and now.
Right? Yeah. So it lifted things a bit, but I still think I see holes on this. I know that this is still a new front office that has a lot of ideas about the way they want to keep, pecking away at this roster. So there is a longer term feel that way with the front office when you talk to them. But again, we often get asked, why isn't a Canadian team on the Cup since the Habs in '93?
Yeah,
there is nothing like these types of situations in Canadian markets. I mean, it's a gong show already to some degree in Toronto, and it certainly is in Vancouver. And I would say Jack Campbell better have a couple of good games here at some point for the Oilers in your market. I mean, it is what it is. It's people react at a higher decibel in these markets, and it's hard to ignore if you're a player or you're a manager.
Lindy Ruff must feel like he's coaching in Edmonton, Toronto, or Winnipeg right now too, though. The fans all over him already. So we talk about Boudreau and it feeling early. The fire Lindy chants were happening a couple games into the season for them. So coaches, man, it's imagine being in the first 5 games of your season and already sweating it a little bit.
Yeah. No, it's and listen, I think that people also understand, Ryan, and I think you'll agree to this, like, you don't get the easier way into a season, because the reality is the points that are attainable in October are the same as the points that are attainable in late March when you're scrambling. The league is so close that you don't get just to throw away a month and say, we'll find her a game later, because that could bury you. That's the reality. And it happened for a couple of teams last year. So that's why there is urgency.
Lastly, on the Vancouver Canucks, here's Bo Horvat.
I keep saying we got to learn from it, but enough's enough. I mean, that's just 3 games in a row now that we've had leads and outplayed teams, and it's just unacceptable by us. It's unacceptable by myself, my leadership. Obviously, I hold myself accountable. I got to be better.
And I believe the Vancouver Canucks are in Columbus. Yes, they are. Set to go against the Columbus Blue Jackets, so they get right back on the horse. Quickly, the Montreal Canadiens. Not a bad start. 2-2. 3-2 overtime win last night. And Kirby Dach off to a nice, tidy little start there. Your early impressions of Montreal, Pierre?
Well, Ryan, this is going back to what I talked about, expectations in a Canadian market. The Leafs are 2-2. The Habs are 2-2. But it's a completely different world in both those original 6 Canadian markets as far as perception and reaction and feeling this morning. Because there are no expectations in Montreal, at least not right now. They better not do too much winning this month, because things may change in that market. But the fan base has been psychologically readied for some tough nights, for a longer-term vision, for supporting their young core, and enjoying what they see on some nights. And they enjoyed it last night. Come back win against the Penguins. And in particular, some reclamation projects leading the way. I mean, Sean Monahan, we'll see what happens there with him, but he's either becomes a prime rental player for the Habs, which I think is probably the likeliest scenario. But who knows? Maybe the two sides want to extend this marriage. Yeah. But I think the rental side of it is probably more likely.
Well, and the thing to keep in mind with him is they already brought a first-round pick in that trade, so they've already got assets through the door with them.
Yeah, free player. Everything's a bonus if he does something positive, right?
Yeah.
And obviously Kirby Dach, that is a longer term upside play that the Habs were banking on when they made that trade. I mean, let's not forget that a 3-way trade that ends up with Romanoff on the Islanders and surprised a lot of people. We were in the draft when all this happened, but Kirby Dach struggled last year. But Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon seeing the value in trying to bring back his young career, and he looks great so far. Let's just call it for what it is. He looks like a young player that needed a fresh start, and that's what he's getting.
Marty St. Louis getting a lot out of his group. You think about the combined experience between him and the general manager, the plan from Jeff Gordon to bring in guys. So far, so good. The way it was put to me by the Quizmaster this morning is that it's too early to say it's a complete success, but it certainly hasn't been a failure. And those are good positive steps here for the Montreal Canadiens. Before we get to Kevyn Adams, and absolutely loved our interview that we did with Kevyn Adams. Such an upbeat guy and well thought. But you're in New York. You saw the Rangers last night. They were my Stanley Cup pick. Boy, are they ever looking like something.
Tell you what, they might make you look smart, and that's something.
That is something. Thanks,
no,
pal.
I mean, listen, it's early. I know, I was just kidding. Sorry, buddy. No, they look. I mean, the game actually got a little sloppy, and then Gerard Gallant would have wanted things a little tighter at the end. But boy, they come at you in waves, and it's interesting. The kids were split up last night. Kako in one line, and Lafreniere in another, with both in top 6 roles. And boy, if those two kids take a step with what they already have, with Zibanejad and Panarin and Chris Kreider, holy jumping. I mean, this team, because at times, let's just call it for what it is. The first half of last year, they really relied on Shesterkin to build them out on Monday night. But this program is really coming along under Gerard Gallant. And boy, oh boy. I mean, I know I'm really putting the cart ahead of the horse, but since I wrote about Patrick Kane in The Athletic yesterday, there's no question to me that if you're going to put a front-runner team on it now, even though there have not been any trade talks yet,
can you imagine?
Gonna wait. It's the Rangers.
Yeah.
And, don't forget, they got a couple of first-round picks, and Patrick Kane has to be comfortable if he decides to move where he wants to move. Well, what's not to like about MSG, and his old pal Panarin from Chicago, from when Panarin was in Chicago. I mean, oh my goodness. That would be a scary thought, but lots to play out before then, and lots of teams are going to try and get in that sweepstake, that's for sure.
Spectacular goaltending, sneaky, excellent blue line. Artemi Panarin's got 10 points in 4 games. Mika Zibanejad has 4 goals in 4 games. All kinds of youth, room to maneuver. The Rangers are dangerous. All right, that was the breakdown brought to you by Pro Hockey Life. Time now to get to our Who's Got Your Back segment, our interview segment. And that's brought to you by Liberty Smart Security, a company that specializes in having your back. High-quality, advanced smart security systems for your home or your business. Liberty Smart Security uses leading-edge technology to protect the things that you value most in life. Your home is your castle. Protect it with Liberty Smart Security. Visit libertysecurity.ca. So I am here in Edmonton, where the Oilers are going to take on the Buffalo Sabres tonight. Pierre Kevyn Adams, Buffalo Sabres. It's been an interesting run as general manager for him. We talked to him about a lot of different things, the Eichel trade, placing bets on young players. What stood out for you in the interview?
I think what stood out for me is that this is a young GM that's had to stick to his philosophy and stick to his guns, or else things were going to get ugly on him. I mean, the Eichel deal was very difficult to pull off, and it took a lot of self-confidence to navigate. There were a lot of people doubting how that thing was going to end up, and he delivered. I mean, that looks early on like a pretty good trade for the Buffalo Sabres, and I think that trade has given Kevyn Adams really some momentum in terms of where he's heading as an executive. That would be my thought.
Yeah, for sure. My favorite part of the interview was us being able to clunk him over the head with Mike Johnson's frustration from a couple of decades ago. So you'll have to hang into the end of the interview to hear that. So this is Who's Got Your Back, presented by Liberty Smart Security, Sabres General Manager Kevyn Adams. All right, pleased to be joined by the 2006 Stanley Cup champion. Now, General Manager, yeah, you smile. You like the sounds of that still. Years later, it still sounds good, eh, Kevin?
Definitely.
I was reading a story. I didn't realize it at the time, and both Pierre and I were there. We were in the building. Did you raise the Stanley Cup with a busted wrist? Did I read that right?
Yeah, I did. I think it was my second shift on a PK in Game 7 there, and actually, I was a little out of position, so it was desperation to block the shot. A Chris Pronger slap shot. He hit me right on the wrist and just exploded my wrist. So I in between the first and second got a few shots in there to numb it up, and I started the second period and it still wasn't enough numb, and it was in so much pain. So they put more in there, and then I was fine. And about 6 or 7 the next morning, I remembered that I actually had a shattered wrist. So it was well worth it, that's for sure.
That had to be, I mean, a Chris Pronger slapper, and you kept playing through the game. Do you recall the feeling when you raised the Stanley Cup with the busted wrist, or were you just adrenaline? Or
yeah, I mean, so much adrenaline, and just such a, to be honest, I wasn't even thinking about it anymore, because the way that series was and the emotion of it, and now we're in Game 7, and then, that happened. And actually, I'll give you one funny story about that. And Peter Laviolette, I'm sure, remembers this. In between the first and second, I said, "Hey, Lavi, just be careful with me, because I broke my wrist. It's going to be tough." Part of my role was a face-off guy. And he's like, "Shut up and get out. You're going to take face-offs if I tell you to take face-offs." And, laughed about it after, maybe used a couple other words too in there, but I was like, "I'm good. I'm just trying to tell you, maybe be careful in the face-off circle," but it was everybody was playing banged up, as every year that happens when you're that far in the playoffs. And so that was just, it was a challenge, but when you're not feeling too much pain when you get to raise the cup.
Top hand or bottom hand? Did you
my
take
bottom
draws?
hand.
And you took draws?
My right wrist, kind of coming through as a righty. So, and I wasn't exactly lighting it up offensively, so I needed to win faceoffs to have some value out there.
I wasn't going to say, but Pierre, I don't know if you looked at the stats. I looked at the stats, and I mean, we all know the role you played, Kevin, so believe me, this is not a chirp, but you were 24 or 25 playoff games and zeros across the board, but valuable minutes, right? Valuable
Well,
minutes.
it's funny about that year is I had my highest total of goals during I think I had 15 goals that year in the regular season, and I wasn't playing on the power play, and actually in the playoffs, so many chances and hit posts and just missed chances, whatever. I was like, you know what? Kill penalties, win faceoffs, block shots. If I get one, I get one, but find a way to help the team win hockey.
Hoist the cup.
And, that's the deal. So,
yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, Kevin, Ryan and I were also in the building last June when Joe Sakic got to hoist the cup in a suit as a GM after having won a couple as a player. So maybe you'll follow in his footsteps in terms of the next time that you lift that trophy. And, and listen, for Joe Sakic, that was a long journey in terms of building that team, and you're still in your early steps of building the Sabres team. I know I could sense a lot of excitement in your market this year, Kevin, in terms of next steps. And what does next steps look for in your eyes for this team right now?
Well, I think from the way our team played last season, we certainly took steps in terms of maturity and players taking responsibility for the locker room and the culture. And we took big strides as the year went on. And, that's why we stayed quiet at the trade deadline, to be honest. And, we weren't in a playoff race at that point, but I wanted to make sure that we gave our players in that locker room every opportunity to have success, to feel, to go into some bigger games that we were going to have and have a chance to, play our best hockey, which we did. And so as we went into the off season, the thought around the fan base and around town was they're starting to like, in terms of the energy that they're seeing every night, and they're connecting with the team. One of the things I've said all along is we want people that want to be here. We want people that truly believe in what we're building, that are just dying to put a Buffalo Sabres sweater on. And then you'll feel that connection with the fan base. And that's what's starting to grow and build here. And now in the next step for us is as you've seen, is, making sure that we identify kind of the core that we're moving forward with, start to, build that out over time and get the players that we can be here for a long time under contract. And now it's just keep pushing to get better every day.
You made Alex Tuch the center of, well, pretty much the biggest trade that you've had to make, and maybe we'll revisit that trade in a minute. But first and foremost, just to your point about wanting guys that want to be there. So Alex Tuch seems as excited as anybody to be a Buffalo Sabre, connecting with the community, connecting with the Bills, the football club. You see him and Josh Allen they've got the jersey swap going between the two of them. My understanding was when Tuch first got to town, the first thing he did was go and meet the front office staff and want to meet everybody. When you made that trade, how much was it about Alex Tuch, the hockey player, and how much of it was about Alex Tuch, the guy that was passionate about being in that area and that person in particular to inject into your organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I'll start with the hockey player. We felt that he was exactly the type of on-ice player we needed, which was big and fast. And, he's a guy that's still in the prime of his career and has term on a contract. And also for me, watching Alex play really closely, I felt that this was potentially someone that could take another step, could continue to get better, and even, with more ice time and opportunity, may even be able to elevate into a higher end elite player in the league. And that's, something we truly believe. Now you look at the other side, which was, we did feel very confident that he was going to buy into being a Buffalo Sabre. And with his, growing up in Central New York and him being a big Sabre fan as a kid, there was certainly some comfort in that. But, you aren't certainly able to talk to players before you make trades. So, you're hoping in some sense, but I did have a little bit of a previous knowledge of the family. Luke Tuch, his younger brother, played for the Junior Sabre program and, knew a lot of people in Buffalo. So I had met his parents years and years ago, knew they were character people and just a good family. So putting all that together, when we were able to make the trade, he was obviously the centerpiece and a key part of that. But we felt comfortable that he was going to embrace it and really be excited to be a Sabre.
Yeah, we're coming up in almost a year next month. Time flies, Kevin, that you made that blockbuster, and you're a young GM, and you're put in a tough situation, obviously, with a player wanting out. can you look back now, 11 plus months later, and share the pressure and the emotion, or perhaps trying to shield the emotion away from the machinations of that trade as you finally get that done?
Well, it was a challenging time for sure, and I think what I tried to be really disciplined with was not getting emotional and making sure that I stayed the course in terms of the return we needed, that we were not going to do something until we felt it was the right thing for the Buffalo Sabres. And I know that people were, there's a lot of talk going on and a lot of pressure was building and stress. And, certainly I had some sleepless nights for sure, but I just felt that this was too big of a, critical decision in our organization to not be 100% comfortable to do the deal we felt was right. So that's why it took so long, but it was a lot. I tried to really look at this from our franchise to say, what do we need out of this type of deal that is going to put us in a better place? And, this isn't an easy type of deal, as you guys know, with the type of player Jack is, but also everything else that was going on. And then you had salaries. I mean, there's just a lot of moving parts. So it was complicated. I learned a lot. It wasn't easy, but I think we were really excited about how it ended up for us.
I wanted to ask you about the concept of placing bets as a general manager. If you want to get ahead of the cap game, sometimes you got to place bets early on in a player's career so that you find value down the road. You've placed 2 big bets this year. And I think you pick players that I know you believe a lot in, but, in Thompson, you got a forward who had pretty unreal year last year, put together a 38-goal season, 7 years at $50 million. Matthias Samuelsson, 7 years, $30 million after 54 games played. People raised an eyebrow at that one, I think maybe more so even than the Thompson one. But as a general manager, Kevin, how do you find, what tips it for you on whether or not to place that type of a bet on one of your players?
Well, I think it's first of all, you don't make these decisions in a vacuum. You don't just come in and I just say, this is what I want to do. You're taking every single bit of information that you have and you're looking at it and you're weighing it. Okay, what makes sense for us in the short term? What makes sense for us, ultimately in the long term if you're doing this length of a deal? You're leaning on the people around you, which is, Jason Karmanos and Mark Jakubowski from the management team. You have Sam Ventura, who runs our analytics department, Jeremiah Crow, pro scouting, and you're just having these conversations day after day after day. Obviously, Donnie Granato and his staff weighing in on what they see out of the player and how they see them being utilized moving forward. So you take all that information in, and then I do really believe, I'm a firm believer in this, Ryan, that you know most about your own players. You know what they're like as people. You know what they're like in the locker room every day. You've had enough body of work that gives you comfort to say this person is going to help us win. And that's why we did. And we were forecasting out and we're looking, Tage is 6'7", played number 1 center role last year. We think he has the ability to keep getting better. Work ethic is there. He wants to be here. You look at some of the other contracts signed, the number was going to be pretty big if he continued to move along in his career. So that's why we got ahead of that one, and we were excited about that. And with Samuelsson, I get it. People could say, hey, this is 50-some games of experience. But what we're looking at is a 6'4", 232-pound athlete that is a worker that is playing in our top, 4. He's 20 to 24 minutes a night at 22 years old, and we think these are the prime years. Your guys a little bit in the league of your words, you're making an investment or a bet into what you believe moving forward, rather than, for me, looking at it like I don't necessarily want to get caught paying down the road for what people have done their whole career. And maybe you've lost their best years. Let's get ahead of it and look to invest in their prime years, and then we'll try to keep the core together.
Well, you also extended your head coach, Don Granato, last week, Kevin, and he had term left on his deal, I think this year and next, and you tacked on to that, which I thought was interesting because I think that sends a message too, does it not, in terms of you tell me, but to me it tells me that you want to sort of firm up the stability that you feel you have there with Don, and it sends a message to him that the faith you have in him.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the continuity and stability, I think, is critical in this organization. When I was fortunate enough to have my contract extended, one of the things I talked to Terry Pegula about was, getting ahead of this with Donnie Granato and making sure that Donnie realized how important and critical he is, and we're in this together. And we work really well together. We challenge each other, we push each other, we trust each other. And I just think that that's why I wanted to make sure that once my situation was being talked about, that let's get Donnie in the same and do the same thing. So that's why we made the decision, and I think part of it too is a message to our players and the organization that we understand there's been turnover and change, in the past.
Mm-hmm.
You have to learn from the past,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't live in the past, and let's move forward together and build this structure and continuity, and give our players that feeling that, okay, there's real alignment here across the board.
So much put into the youth in your lineup. You've got guys playing high up in your lineup that don't have a lot of experience. You've put some veteran players around them to insulate them, and nowhere is that more true than on your blue line. Rasmus Dahlin is working his way, certainly making big strides. Owen Power, some games for you last year. He's already stepped in, played over 20 minutes the last couple of games here. What kind of strides do you think Power is going to be able to make in his first full season in the NHL?
Well, I think you'll see big strides. And the reason I say that is because he is a player that is extremely self-aware. He understands very quickly what I did right, what I did wrong. I used to talk to him after games last year in Michigan, and he would come out in his sweat still and say, I didn't like what I did on this shift. I mean, he's just very rare in terms of a young player that has self-awareness. And I think when you have that allows you to learn from situations. He is learning so much every day. You can just see it in practice and in games. He's 19 years old and trying to just take it all in. And, every situation, it's just information for him to grow. So, and that's what we're talking about. You look at Dahlin, you look at Power, you look at Samuelson, you look at Hart. These are 4 really young players, and they're playing key roles and big minutes for us. And I'm okay with that. It's a young league right now, and I know that we're going against more experienced lineups, and there's going to be times where, we are a little bit, young in terms of experience, but I do think that it will pay off with these guys because they're all learners. They want to get better, and they take mistakes the right way. Donnie coaches mistakes the right way. Donnie doesn't say, "Hey, that's it, you're done for the period." He says, "Hey, you need to be better. Here's why," and lets them fix it. And I think there's something to that about a young player just having confidence to be able to go out and play the way they need to play to have success.
Well, Kevin, I know you're probably going to shut me down, but if I didn't try, I wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. So I'm just going to end things on my end with this, which is that there's a veteran star player with ties to Buffalo, New York that might get dealt at the deadline, and he's USA July 1st. And when I wrote about him in the Athletic on Monday, I noticed a lot of the comments from some Sabres fans who were wishing upon a star. So I'll just leave you with that. Now, you notice I didn't name him by name because I don't want you to get in trouble with the league. But but I'll just drop you with that scenario and see how you come at me here.
Well, I appreciate it because the rules, and I certainly can't or don't talk about other teams' players. But what I can say is we're growing this team and organization with the right way in my mind, which is to draft players, develop players, and then retain the players that you believe are going to help you win. We also know that we have to add to our lineup, and at the right time, at the right place, if it makes sense, we're going to look at everything. So I wouldn't rule anything out in what we're going to do moving forward.
High skill, top line winger, potentially the goal scoring, puck distributing variety. You could see that being a fit moving forward at some point. Not naming any names, just that type of guy. Air quotes, that type.
You guys sounds like you guys are the scouts, so I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
I know you love it when we dive into that end of the pool with you. So listen, Kevin, the name of the podcast is Got Your Back. Pierre and I, we always ask people when we have them on, if there's a time in their life that stands out where somebody came through for them, somebody had their back, big, small, funny, goofy, whatever. We've really enjoyed hearing other folks' stories. What sticks out in your mind when I put that question to you? Who had Kevyn Adams back?
Well, I think that's give you a long answer, to be honest with you, because I've had a lot of challenges, in my life in terms of my hockey career, and it wasn't just easy or a straight line, up. Even, challenges to ended up, through the minors and trades once I got to the NHL and all those type of things. And I've had very, very close group of family and friends, and my wife and kids and family around me that has really helped me and always had my back. But I guess from the hockey, answer, one name I'll give you is Chris Bergeron. He is the head coach of Miami University, Miami, Ohio, which is my alma mater. And 1992 was my freshman year, and I was 17 years old and overwhelmed, and I wasn't even shaving. And, I took a big jump, and he was the senior captain. And so this is 30 years ago. This is 1992. And, he really looked out for me, took me under my wing and helped me kind of navigate that first time in my life of being away from home and being overwhelmed, and looked out for me. And 30 years later, he's still someone that I respect and look up to, and, appreciate what he's done for me in my life, whether it's, in this job now or in the years past, just, getting together for beer and just talking, and he's doing great things. He's going to build that program back up to what everybody hopes is an elite program. I have no doubt about that. But I guess that's just someone that comes to mind right away for me. That's always had my back and always helped me just be a better person.
Love it. Thanks so much for sharing that.
No problem.
Well, you know who's back you didn't have one time? And I'm kind of sewering you here, bud. So I told Mike Johnson, who's going to be on the podcast this week. I told Mike Johnson we were interviewing you. He goes, yeah, Kev, my old buddy. Yeah, I took a playoff goal away from me one year. It was his fault.
Oh, I had my toe in the crease.
So you do remember. He was wondering if you would remember. Tell us the story from your head.
Well, not only do I remember, but but he probably doesn't remember this part. So I get, I'm in the lineup. It's the second round. We're playing the Penguins. And that was the awful year of my, guy's toe in the crease, had nothing to do with anything. And goals were coming back. So I definitely cost him and the team a goal in the playoffs. But what I most remember is Matthew Barnaby skating by our bench and just carving me, going, Adams just ruined it for you, Johnny. Like, just, carving me. And just killing me about it. And I just remember thinking, I'm just trying to survive in the league and make an impression. And, so that was a tough one for sure.
I was looking at your stats that year. So it looks like you played the entire season in the American Hockey League. You got 80 games in the AHL, one regular season game, but then you came in and played 7 playoff games. Yes. I think Johnny had said you had just come into the lineup and took a goal from him. So just so you know, he's still a little sour at you.
Yeah, well, tell him it must have hurt his contract negotiations or something for him to be still sour this many years later.
I know. Johnny, he'll never forgets a good grudge. Kevin, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it, and best of luck the rest of the way.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it. Take care.
All right. And once again, our thanks to Sabres general manager Kevyn Adams. Should be a fun game tonight between the Oilers and the Buffalo Sabres. That'll wrap it for the podcast, folks. Big thanks to our sponsors, of course, Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals, Pro Hockey Life, and Liberty Smart Security. We're going to drop another podcast on Wednesday morning. Mike Johnson is going to check in, our first chance to chat with him here on Got Your Back, LeBrun and Rishaug. Pierre will be back breaking down any news that there was from the NHL Board of Governor meetings. Thanks for your downloads and your subscriptions. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you real soon. Cheers, folks.